Well, you know, Coso originally developed the internal control framework in 1992. And it had been almost 20 years since the original framework was developed. And we looked at all of the changes that we had seen over those 20 years, including, of course, the advancements in technology. Think about where was technology in 1992? Internet was in its infancy. We certainly didn't see many of the technological risks that you see today, cloud computing, mobile technology risks. None of those risks really were present at that time. So we saw a lot of evolution in technology. We saw a lot of knowledge. The body of knowledge around fraud had significantly evolved. And we felt like that the framework itself should be updated to ensure that it addresses some of these key areas as you go through a process of designing and implementing an internal control framework.
Well, broadly, I want to mention two things that I think internal auditors should recognize about the updated guidance at the outset. First, the underlying objectives are discussed in a more broad, robust manner. And the former external financial reporting objective has been expanded to be just reporting. And so it includes internal reporting as well as external reporting, and non-financial reporting as well as financial reporting. And the compliance and operations objectives, there's more discussion surrounding it to emphasize the ability to apply the framework in those areas and not just, for example, in the reporting area of the framework. Secondly, the updated framework explicitly enumerates 17 principles that were implicit in the original framework. And internal auditors need to really consider each of these principles, and I believe they're very helpful in the understanding of what we mean when we say there are 5 components that surround the framework in both the original and the updated framework. The 17 principles define better what we mean within each of those components.
Well, there are a couple of key similarities and a couple of key differences that come to mind for me. Certainly the same as the core definition of internal control is unchanged. Coso defined it as a process designed to provide reasonable assurance and on from that, and that core definition remains unchanged as well. The 5 components are unchanged. Those 5 components, if you remember the cube, are monitoring activities, information and communication, control activities, risk assessment, and the control environment. And then the key things I see that are changing is that the 2013 framework considers changes in the business and operating environments that have happened since the original framework in 1992. So if you think about things like governance, globalization, and technology, those are certainly areas that have changed rather drastically since the original framework, and they're reflected in the 2013 framework. As well, what's changing is that it expands upon the operations and reporting objectives more so than it did in the 1992 version.
One of the other considerations that we had on the Coso board was the fact that while our original framework did recognize that internal controls are needed to be designed and implemented for all risks in a company, that over the last 10 years or so, the framework itself had been used primarily to assess the overall effectiveness of financial controls. But ultimately, financial controls are only one component of a system of internal controls. They're the ones that are designed to mitigate the risks over financial reporting and over the financial operations themselves. What the new framework does is to reiterate and remind the user that in fact internal controls need to be in place for all risks of a company, whether they're financial risks, operational risks, compliance risks, technology risks. All risks need to have internal controls designed and implemented in order to mitigate those risks.